Coming up in today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we're talking drama and pressure that rests on the shoulders of the Eagles and the other NFC contenders. Plus, Gino and I, we get into some futures talk, betting right on FanDuel for the Eagles in 2023. All that and more in this Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Louis DiBiase joined as always by Gino Camilleri. Gino, 10 days away from the regular season. Eagles, Patriots. Can't believe it's here already, but it's been a long time coming. I'm ready to turn the page from 2022 and get this thing started on another run.
It's about time. And the last taste in our mouth of seeing the Eagles lose that game, it is unfortunate, but every day, every week, I think they've gotten better and better in trying to fill in some of the gaps that maybe let them down towards the end of the season last year. And you're going to go out there and you're going to play a cross-conference opponent. You're not playing a division rival. It's not like playing Washington week one, which seemed like a perpetual outing each and every year. But this is a game that you can go and say, okay, Bill Belichick, this game, you're going to have all offseason to game plan for this Philadelphia Eagles team. Let's go out there and show what we can do against one of the better coaching staffs in all of football. And you're going against Mac Jones, who's arguably the complete opposite of Jalen Hurts. Show why Jalen is the modern-day quarterback, why the Eagles are in the position that they are.
I would hate to be a Patriots fan.
New England is fighting to be not in the basement.
They're fighting to be 7-10 for all of eternity. I don't know how New England. Well, they can do it by wiping their tears with their 6 Super Bowl rings. So they're just fine. But yeah, I can't wait to get this season started. There's just been so much hype this offseason. And Gino, how are you feeling emotionally about the 2023 season because of everything that happened last year with the new look of the team, everything now we've seen the summer and the preseason training camp? Where's your head at? Confidence level? Is there anything you're nervous about, or any questions that you have maybe early on in the year?
I feel good. I'm just ready to get to the season. And I said this last week when I got married, and I used the analogy. Everybody's like, "How's your stress level?" I'm like, I feel like I'm studying for an exam in college where I know all the material and I'm just ready to take the exam.
Yeah, we've been through it before.
That's where the Eagles are too, right, Lou? Like, they know what they have to do. They know what's at stake. They're just ready to go out on the field and don't push too much. We've seen in the past what that can do. We watched Carson Wentz basically come out and had the best first half and then the worst first half within one game on a schedule and then throw the season away. And Jalen Hurts, this is his go-around, and this is his chance to go out there and make a big mark right away like he did last year. And 2023 should be looked at the same way that 2022 was looked at. You haven't earned anything yet. Yeah, you got to the Super Bowl, but you can't do what you did in 2018, be hungover.
There's more pressure, though. I don't think, I think mentally,
so?
Yes, 100%. Even though they're not the Super Bowl champion, they're not the underdog. I mean, last year they weren't really an underdog. There was a lot of hype around them, but this year they're supposed to be the team that represents the NFC again in the Super Bowl. There is that 2018 kind of pressure. Even though you're not the champs, people are looking at you as a team that went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You were maybe one play away from winning it. So I think you're right that I think the Eagles feel the way you do, that there will be no differences, and I don't think it's going to get to them. But I think from a media and fan perspective, I think there's definitely more to it in this season than last year.
Well, you don't want to be a Buster Douglas type of approach, right? Where you just get one big win and that's it. You want to be consistent. You want to build that dynasty type of team where you're going to the Super Bowl, let's say 2 out of every 4 years, 3 out of every 4 years.
Well,
you
that's
want
why I
to
think
be
they have
where
the
Kansas
mentality
City
that you're talking about. I think they truly are taking this day by day, and they're not letting that pressure get to them. I don't think they feel more pressure, but I think, people are definitely putting it on them. The expectations have definitely soared.
And I go back to It's not because that's what makes this game so fun. You don't want to have those seasons. I was just thinking back to Andy Reid's last year, and do you remember that season that they won that last game on some silly 2-point conversion against Tampa Bay? And it was like, why did they have to go 4
That
and
was Nick
12 or 3?
Foles' first win in his career.
Yes, it was.
A touchdown to
his
Jeremy
first one.
Maclin. It was the same
Yep.
play call, by the way, that Doug drew up in the 2018 double doink to Golden Tate. I hate that I know all
Oh,
that.
was
Carry
that?
it.
No
Yeah,
way. What a
carry on.
sicko you are, dude. But no, you don't want those type of seasons where you're just saying, okay, let's try and get 4 wins and walk out of there. You want these seasons where you are the king of the hill at this point, right? And the pressure that you're talking about, I understand because your expectation is to get back there.
Yeah.
But I look at what I was thinking during the Super Bowl when I just look at Jalen Hurts and I see how calm, cool, and collected that kid is. And that's how you have to look at it. Like, yes, we, as people that have never been in that environment, are probably saying the pressure is insurmountable.
I'm feeling the pressure emotionally for them more than they actually are.
But Jalen, the kid has been in every high-profile environment in Alabama, in Oklahoma, that all they know is football. All the media knows is football.
And all they know is a target on their back. You know, I mean, look at the Georgia kids. They are back-to-back. I mean, look at Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. They went back-to-back. So they know what it was like last year heading into a college football season, being the reigning champions, meeting those expectations.
And you don't have to just meet those expectations. You have to even do better than what you did last year because the expectation is where you got to last year. Exactly.
Finishing it. Yeah.
And it's trying to overcome the shortcomings that you messed up on last year. And the expectation is represent the NFC, be the first team to win a back-to-back NFC East title by a landslide, in my opinion. Like, that should be the goal.
Yeah.
And then go and beat whatever quarterback they put in front of you. That has to be the one mindset. But you don't get there by just going through the motions, doing what they did in 2018. You actually have to go out there and show why you were in that position and show why you are deserving, because it's not a league where you just compound year after year. It's a fresh slate, and you only get 17 chances to show yourself. And if you mess up and slip up on a 1 or 2 because you're thinking back to last year, well, that could be the difference between a 1 and a 3 seed, and that could be the difference between home field advantage and getting to the Super Bowl and not getting to the Super Bowl.
Well, and I like that you mentioned 2018 because I do want to bring that season up because that's the closest thing we've had to what we're dealing with now in 2023. Even though they're not the reigning champs, as I mentioned, they have a reputation as a Super Bowl contender that pretty much was like on the brink. They were, again, a play or 2 away from being the champs. That's how close it was. So a lot of the same expectations and drama does come with this team. And I think, as you mentioned, the 2018 team, that definitely got to them for a lot of reasons. It wasn't just that the first half of the year. It was the quarterback drama and the injuries there. It was the injuries across the roster. It was the coaching. It was just so much stuff. I mean, they had just burnt, everything down to get that Super Bowl in 2017. But I will give the 2018 team credit. At the end, I mean, you win, 5 of your last 6 to make the postseason. You win a playoff game. You're a few plays away from an NFC title. I want to use that season as a way to tell fans, like, this year, I don't think the Eagles are going to struggle this year to get into the playoffs like they did in 2018, but prepare for it to look different. 2017 and 2018, 2 deep playoff runs looked vastly different. This year, it's not going to be, I think the team's going to be just as good as last year. I think they have an even higher ceiling. I think they can win a Super Bowl, which they didn't do last year. But the path probably won't be the same. They probably won't be 14-0 this year. The schedule is a lot tougher. But I think that doesn't always mean, the regular season path, even if it's tougher and it's different than the year before when you were just a powerhouse, doesn't always mean your title opportunities are worse. I think there's been a lot of years where the team that won a Super Bowl, they went through more than probably other years they did. Like the Packers, look at 2010. They went through a lot more drama than 2011 when they were, 15-1, and they didn't win it all that year. So I think it's going to look different for sure. That doesn't mean they're going to be worse, but it's going to be a tougher path.
You're going to get everybody's best swing. You're going to get everybody's best punch.
You're getting tougher hitters this time.
Every week you are going to have to be on your toes, and that's what I'm talking about. And that's why 2017 going into 2018 really was like, what the heck? Like that Colts game where you're saying we should be blowing this team out of the water, and you're struggling to stay in that game, which you had to win in the long run to get to the playoffs. You don't want those type of scenarios because you were held up on the prior season. You have to let that go. We have to stop talking about 2022 now, yesterday, weeks ago. That's when we had to stop talking about it. And your thoughts have to be, how are we going to beat the New England Patriots? And then how are we going to beat the team the next week? And how are we going to recover for the next week? That has to be the approach. You could get held up in wanting to get to the Super Bowl. That's 20 games away. That's so far. That's half a calendar year away. You can get caught up in that. What you have to get caught up in is the emotion of now and understanding that all you can do is control the opponent in front of you and go and do that.
It is so cheesy, Gino, but you really
but you have to.
What I'm about to say, you really do have to fall in love with the process, or else you're never going to get back there. If you're like you're saying, if you're so zoomed in on thinking about just getting back to that moment of last year and avenging it, you're never going to get there. And I think that's why a team like the Patriots had so much success, because as psychopath as Bill Belichick and Tom Brady were, and I kind of hate sometimes when athletes and, some successful people in life say, like when a coach wins a championship and they're like, I'm already thinking about next year. That bothers me because I feel like you have to enjoy it, or what's the point? But you kind of have to be wired that way because it's such a marathon to get back that you have to be excited for that next day of practice. And it's cliche, but I think it's true, and it stems from somewhere.
The marathon comparison is perfect, because you don't run 26.2 miles without running the first mile, without running the second mile. It is cliche, but last year when I was coaching high school football, our head coach made a great point. He's like, the teams that win state titles are the teams that are okay practicing when it gets down to 1 degree, when it gets dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. You have to fall in love with the process, like you're saying. Why is Alabama so good? Why is Georgia so good? Well, school is secondary to football, which is their first education.
And your head coach gets mad at you when you allow a touchdown when you're up 60-7. I mean, that's
exactly.
Why. Exactly.
That's
and I think the Eagles are kind of wired this way. I think they're a lot more loose and they have more fun for sure. And there's the personalities show more. But when it comes to their preparation and what they're like, Jalen Hurts is clearly that kind of guy that every single day looks forward to every part of the process. And you got to have that. It's why, again, I don't think they're feeling that kind of pressure. It's more, again, a media and fan built up thing, but it's definitely there. And, they start it in 10 days against the New England Patriots. The Eagles should be seen as the top contenders in the NFC. And, the good news is they're not dealing with a lot of the drama that some of these other contenders are. I want to get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's huge. NFL Sunday Ticket finally on other platforms, so we can watch all of our teams across the league. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. Gino and I, we're gonna bet some futures in segment 3, so be ready through FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the Locked On Podcast Network and the NFL. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for our everydayers making us your first listen each and every day. Gino, the interesting thing about the NFC, the Eagles should clearly be the favorite, not just because they made the Super Bowl last year and their roster looks incredible, but a quarterback perspective too. Jalen Hurts is so much better than pretty much anybody else in this conference. The other thing that you should feel confident about the Birds, in segment 1, we were talking about like pressure and new expectations on this team that we haven't really seen since, I would say, 2018, coming off Super Bowl 52. The thing is, though, is there isn't really a lot of actual things that they should feel pressure from, like injuries that they have to like on the field stuff, if you know what I mean, or any kind of drama with 2020, the Jalen Hurts pick, or the injuries of 2018 and 2019. There's not a whole lot for them to truly overcome right now. When you look at the other teams across this conference, like you look at the drama San Francisco's dealt with over the last few months, when you look at what Dallas is dealing with now after trading, for Trey Lance, some of these teams coming into the season, they've got some baggage, and we know with the Birds, if that's the case, i.e. TO, i.e. 2020 with Wentz and Hurts, that can really hold the team back regardless of how much talent you have.
There was a point in the Foles-Wentz discussion where I wanted nothing more than to just watch football and never have to utter their names ever again, right? Yeah. And the old adage of if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. Well, seems like that's going on in Dallas right now, Lou. And
it feels so much like 2020. Like Dak Prescott did not sound happy, Gino, in that press conference. And that's, I mean, I think he's right for it, but I think Jerry Jones is kind of right too to put the pressure on. It's kind of, I just think it's a bold move to do right before the season. That to me is crazy. Unless you truly think Lance is going to be the guy in a year, bananas move by Jerry. But that's him. That's him.
It seems like we're just playing Mario Kart and you just have the star and you're in first place and nothing can affect you. Not even the blue little shell that comes all the way from last. The automatic one, right? And then everybody behind you is slipping on banana peels and they should be worrying about the guys in front of them. And you're exactly right, Lou. Like, even right now, you look at Washington, they're going through their changeover, and can they be better to challenge this division? Can Dallas even overcome their own hangups? And we did a crossover between all of the NFC East teams, and I said the biggest challenger to the Eagles right now was the Giants, and Mr. Landon McCool over at Locked On Cowboys took offense to that. But why should we give them respect when they really haven't done anything to deserve that? And then
I mean,
they
Daniel
add
Jones
another
already
quarterback.
has almost as many playoff wins as Dak Prescott.
That's what I'm saying.
I think,
and a better head coach, Lou, and a better general manager, and a better defense.
Yeah.
And
I think Trey Lance, the trade itself, from a philosophical perspective, makes sense. Dak, I feel like, is kind of capped out. He's only had 2 playoff wins. He's going to need a new contract soon. Trey Lance is all the upside in the world, only a 4th-round pick. But the timing of it, it's, again, kind of like the Eagles pick with Hurts. Logistically, you can understand why they did it. Mm-hmm. But, again, with quarterback, you just got to read the room different. And you could see it in Dak's face that it definitely, the pressure was already on him this year. Basically, it's Super Bowl or bust, or at least conference title or bust, since they can't get back there. But now you throw another quarterback, because before there were no other replacement options. Dallas was stuck in this purgatory because they're kind of like the 76ers of the NFL. It's like they're too good to pick a high quarterback, but they're not quite good enough to win a Super Bowl. Now there's an actual potential replacement behind him. Jerry, I think what he was trying to do is really send that message. I just don't know if that's maybe the right move if you truly want Dak to pan out. That's a lot of drama in Dallas, and it's already a team that's always under the microscope.
In San Francisco right now, hoping that Brock Purdy can just come back from this injury.
They did was bold, man. They're putting all their chips in that basket.
And you're back up Sam Darnold right now, and you gave up 3 first-round picks to go and get Trey Lance. And
all the talk they've had about the Eagles, they would have won if quarterback didn't get hurt.
How bad is the NFC South? The NFC West might be run by Seattle at this current point in time, and the rest of those teams in Arizona, not very good. San Fran is going to challenge you, but they have their quarterback issues. The North, we'll see what happens there. But it's like
every Cousins for the same reasons as Dak Prescott.
Yeah, every other team has their reality television moment that they're trying to overcome, and the Philadelphia Eagles are just preparing to play football. You're right, Lou. What is the off-field thing? And now it kind of seems like
the Eagles don't have one for the first time in a long
time. It
time.
flipped where Dallas was like, oh, we got Dak Prescott. We don't got any questions. And Wentz and Foles, then Wentz and Hurts. And
then
now Jalen Hurts
the first-round pick. How about last offseason? How about Jalen Hurts and the first-round pick they had in 2023? Yeah. I mean.
Does it again. Again and again. Again and again and again. Does this happen? And the Eagles finally said, we can't do this anymore. We can't do the off-field stuff and overcome that on the field. Going back to Terrell Owens. That's my point. It kept happening. This was something that they inevitably had to say, this cannot be part of our culture. This splitting of a locker room. You can't win with a division in that room. It's happened forever. It's happened for nearly 20 years in Philadelphia. And finally, they bought in with Jalen. Nick has his team on the right track. Dallas is trying to figure their situation out. The New York Giants, they paid Daniel Jones. We'll see if he's the guy. Sam Howell is Sam Howell. If you're going to say, what is the biggest storyline for any team? It's always quarterback. Who has the least question marks at that position? It's Philadelphia Eagles. You got to feel pretty good right now, Lou.
The quarterback, there's the least amount of questions. I think there's the least amount of questions from a roster perspective. And finally, drama. Again, Gino, as we've been talking about, I mean, I feel like all 5 seasons before this, we've been doing Locked On Eagles together. There was some sort of drama. Again, they didn't have a Trey Lance behind Jalen Hurts last year, but they had a first-round pick this year in a much better quarterback class. And that was definitely pressure. It was do or die time for Hurts with how good the roster was, too. There were really there was no pressure. Or I should say there was no excuses left. And so he took that and ran with it. Dak certainly could. Brock Purdy is another guy that has a lot of pressure, Gino. He's got Darnold breathing on his neck. And they made a bold move, trading away a player. They gave up 2 first-round draft picks for to move up and didn't even give him really a chance. He had, 4 career starts, and one was in a monsoon. The other one, he got hurt in the first half. So they put a lot on Brock Purdy. So at quarterback, there's already enough pressure. That can really make or break a guy.
You're preaching to the choir, Lou. We've seen it.
It's nice to not be in Carson Wentz. I love it. I mean, it absolutely did. And again, I can understand it. I get why Carson Wentz was mad. I get why Dak Prescott was mad. I get why Aaron Rodgers was pissed off back in the day. Brett Favre. The list goes on and on and on. But it tends to this either really works out well for a team or it really doesn't.
The cream rises to the top, man. Like, that's what Jalen Hurts did. He won that competition. He just sat back. He didn't enter the competition. People threw his name in the ring, and then all of a sudden he's like, all right, I'm just going to go show what I can do, and he did, and he came out on top, and it really does settle your mind, right, Lou? Because what was the discussion in 2018, 2019, 2020? It wasn't football. It was, can the guy playing quarterback actually lead this team? It wasn't even talking about, can he throw it, which he couldn't. Can he get back to his 2017 form, which he couldn't. And now the discussion with Jalen is he's got that all settled.
Well, last year there was the same questions. It was, can he throw it? And he couldn't. So, this year, those questions definitely do not surround them. And, Gino, that's why on FanDuel right now, the Eagles have the second-best Super Bowl odds. The Chiefs are the favorite at plus 600. The Philadelphia Eagles are at plus 800. Behind them, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals. Then you get to the NFC again with the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. I truly think, and again, of course, this is an Eagles show, so take it with a grain of salt, but the Eagles might be the best bet. If you don't think, I've mentioned this take on the podcast before, it's been some months, but unless you're banking on the Chiefs, and they should be the favorite, but a team has not repeated it in the NFL since 2004 when New England beat the Eagles. Actually, that was the last time a team repeated. Unless you're banking on the Chiefs doing something that has not been done in 2 decades, what team are you taking in the NFL this year? The Eagles or the gauntlet of the NFC or AFC? Like, you might take the field of the AFC over the Eagles, but when it comes to the Eagles versus just one particular team in that conference, I'm taking the Birds there at plus 800.
I think you have to. It's like seeing a team in the NCAA tournament for basketball where you're looking at a region and saying, oh, if they're a 2 and they can win that first game, they don't have a hefty 1 seed and they're probably going to run the table and all they have to do is get with the big boys. And if they can get in those games, they have a good enough team to go and challenge them. And that's what I think the Eagles are, right? Like, they know that their bracket and their region isn't that tough. They just have to win their games and come out on top and get that 1 seed. And I'm with you, man. Like, what is the variability in the AFC versus the NFC? There's a way bigger variance on what team could potentially come out of the AFC versus the NFC, in my opinion. Honestly, I think
Gino,
with the odds, it might be Dallas and San Francisco, but I think you can boil it down to like 3 or 4 teams that it realistically could be. I think it could be Philly. I think it could be San Fran. Throw a team like Seattle just based off their defense and the potential ability to come out of the West if they do have a better record. And I don't think any of the teams in the South, and let's just say Detroit, they just have some crazy run. Like, I think those are the only 3 teams, but the Eagles are so much better than that next team as opposed to Kansas City versus Buffalo versus right now the Chargers or Cincinnati or whatever one of the 9 good football teams that conference has.
And, I think maybe for the same logic as why you bet the Eagles win the Super Bowl over that AFC gauntlet, you could make the case for a San Francisco or a team like Dallas or a team like Seattle over like a Buffalo Bills, or maybe not the Bengals, but like a Baltimore Ravens. I think another team that, if you're removing the Eagles from this conversation, you want to get the best bang for your buck when it comes to these FanDuel Super Bowl futures. How about like Doug Peterson and the Jacksonville Jaguars? I'm not predicting they'd win a Super Bowl, but if you want to get the most money on a team that could realistically do it off the backs of an MVP candidate, which I think Trevor Lawrence could now that he has Calvin Ridley taking that next step this year, the Jaguars, their odds right now are pretty low. I mean, and again, it's tough in that conference, but they're in the easiest division.
When you look at these outliers and the teams that you're saying, okay, you can win some legitimate money, I think you follow the formula, right? Young quarterback, second or third year head coach, good up and coming defense. They've gotten some weapons. I think, not saying that it would happen, but Chicago, like, throw a couple bucks on them as one of those teams that.
Yeah, if you think Fields can be this year's Jalen Hurts, maybe that's definitely an option.
That may be a Green Bay with Jordan Love potentially. I don't know.
Depends on how you feel about quarterback.
But I'm with you that if you're looking at that second tier, Jacksonville probably presents the best value, because I think Baltimore is going to be.
I love me some Baltimore, but their division
overvalued.
Is
their division's too tough. They're going to be overvalued because of what they have done in the past. I think Jacksonville hasn't shown enough yet to truly get those line moving type of values to where they're moving up towards the like plus 1,500, plus 1,800. You're still going to get really good value on them at like plus 2,500, I would imagine they're at, or something crazy like that, Lou.
Yep.
And Trevor Lawrence is one of those guys where you're saying, could he battle with the other guys in that conference? In my opinion, absolutely.
I think he showed it. I think so. And now you add Calvin Ridley to that fold. Yeah, even more. Gino, when it comes to the NFC odds right now to win the NFC Championship, the Eagles are at plus 330. Of course, San Francisco's right behind them at plus 400. Dallas at plus 600. Detroit, I get the hype. I really do. They were exciting last year. They won a lot of games down the stretch. The NFL thinks they're going to be good too. They're putting them on week 1, the opener next Thursday against the Chiefs. They have the 4th highest odds though in the NFC at plus 800. Again, I like them, but I think like Seattle at plus 1,300. I feel like Seattle deserves the hype I think Seattle deserves the hype that Detroit is getting.
I think you're right on, because if you're looking at those two teams as quarterbacks that you can win with some weapons that are pretty good, I would say that Seattle probably beats them. If Jameson Williams comes back healthy with Detroit, we'll see. But right now, I give it to Seattle, far and away. Defensively, I look at Seattle as the front runner as well.
I agree.
I think it's closer than the offense, but I still give it to them. And right now, Geno Smith or Jared Goff, I've seen Jared Goff get to those type of games. I've never seen Geno have these type of weapons and get to that environment. Like right now, the weapons that Geno Smith has is kind of what Jared Goff had when he went to the Super Bowl with the Rams a couple years ago, right? 3 awesome wide receivers that you could get the job done. And plus 1,300, if you're giving plus 500 points between those two, Lou, give me the plus 1,300 with Seattle all day. I like that division a lot more. I think they could come out of there and absolutely beat San Francisco in at least a 1 game. They have a better quarterback. Brock Purdy is Brock Purdy until he comes back and does something different. That's who he is. And the North, those guys could beat the ever-living heck out of each other, and they could all go 8-8 for goodness gracious.
And it's why I'm going to keep picking the Eagles in all these bets because, and it's obvious and it sounds simple, but they have Jalen Hurts. And if you're going to predict a team that's going to get upset in the postseason, if there's going to be a team that just it's not their day in the NFC Championship, is it going to be the team that has an elite quarterback? Like, I think it's going to be the team that has a Brock Purdy or a Kirk Cousins or a Dak Prescott or even a Geno Smith or a Jared Goff that I think at any moment can have a stinker more than Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has not had a game where he just doesn't have it today. He hasn't had that since the wild card game against Tampa. So I think, again, there's a lot of reasons you pick the birds in these bets, but the main reason over anything is quarterback.
You really put that Tampa game on Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, he was terrible. Oh, he was egregious.
He wasn't great.
He was awful.
But at the same time, we look back at that game, it's like, man, Jonathan Gannon's defense
never
did anything in a playoff.
It was one of the worst quarterback games I've seen.
No, I totally agree.
It was brutal.
But
But
that
yeah.
man JG didn't do much in those
Oh,
games.
trust me, you don't have to convince me on Jonathan Gannon. I know
No,
how
you're
bad he
right,
was.
it's a simple formula, and that's why at the end of the day, it just comes down to Philadelphia having to take care of business, right? Because the discussion we're having is, what if a Mac Jones level quarterback had a really good team? Well, you have a much better quarterback with a much better
There's just so many
team,
more
right?
what ifs that have to happen when you don't have a Jalen Hurts. There's just so much more that has to go right for you.
Yeah, like what if Geno Smith does something you've never seen him do, and Jared Goff does better than he did in the Super Bowl year? There's Jalen Hurts is one of those guys that he breaks barriers and does things that are different, and you're saying, yeah, that makes sense, as opposed to the other guys. It's like, yeah, it makes sense why those guys are just quarterbacks you can win with.
Yeah, exactly. Gino, I think, again, this is a team that has a lot of pressure this year. There are question marks. There are new starters. There's a lot of younger role players on defense, especially for the Eagles. But when it comes to the pressure and drama, who has more to deal with the NFC? It's teams like San Fran. It's teams like Dallas. And I think those are worse teams because of the quarterback they have, and I think because of the rosters. So for those reasons, hammering the birds with these bets from FanDuel. We'll continue to preview it 10 days away until the Eagles kick off things week 1 against the New England Patriots in Foxborough. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. This has been the Locked On Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to our everydayers for making us your first listen Monday through Friday. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.